Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Joanne Stevens, and it's time for our Thursday, 1 p.m. Central Time weekly call in show for mobile home park owners. I want to welcome everybody to the show. Today, our topic is going to be partnerships and when it isn't working, and things you can do to identify when it's not working and things you can do to get you talk to your partners, get the partnership communicating again effectively, or decide that the partnership has evolved to the point where maybe it's time for the partners to buy the buy each other out or sell the property or just come up with a new solution. So the title of our um, the topic today is the Naked Mobile Home Park, and most of the listeners are probably not familiar with the popular weekly drama from the 1960s called The Naked City. And the theme of The Naked City was New York City, a town of 8 million, or city of 8 million people. There are 8 million stories in The Naked City. Well, it's been said that there are 50,000 mobile home parks in the United States, and I would submit that there are 50,000 stories at least, although we need to, probably quadruple that because every partner has their own story, which reminds me of a saying that my father had, and he, in talking about not a partnership, but you could apply it to a partnership. When a couple got a divorce, he said, well, there's his side, her side, and then there's the truth. And, whenever partners aren't agreeing on something or communicating, there's always their side, each or however many partners there are, and then there's the truth. So before we get into our topic today of partnerships, I want to make a few announcements. And I want everybody to put December 10th and 11th of 2017 on their calendar. Those are the dates for the Mobile Home Park Owner Symposium here in Cedar Rapids. You'll be getting more information about that. We'll be emailing that out and putting it up on the website. But mark your calendars. We're going to have appraisers. We're going to have a speaker about 1031 exchanges. We're going to have a speaker talk about capital gains taxes. We're going to have some real live sellers talk about what they did with their cash proceeds when they sold the property. And we're also going to talk about operations. How do you tweak or improve your operations so that it's not, so it runs more smoothly, so that you're not every year, year in and year out, trying to solve the same problems, that you're getting the residents to understand better what the expectation is, and you're also able to have a life because you're not on, people are operating more on, the park is operating more on automatic pilot, not completely, but just things are getting done without you having to be involved in every single thing. So those are some of the topics that we will cover at the December 10th and 11th symposium here in Cedar Rapids. Also, I want to remind people of the May 2nd through May 4th Manufactured Housing Institute Congress in Las Vegas. It will be at Caesars this year, and it's there is a jam-packed schedule on Tuesday, May 2nd. They will have the educational forum that they've had every year for going on 10 years. It's a very, very worthwhile day of educational presentations about everything from financing and buying homes and collecting rent and screening tenants and marketing the park, public relations, best practices for marketing the homes. It's a very worthwhile, jam-packed day. And this conference is relatively inexpensive for all the value that it offers. So go to my website and click on Save the Date to get the link to the website to see the registration and the topics that will be presented at that forum. The other thing is, in mid-September, George Allen will have his annual roundtable. We'll put that up on the website very soon, and that is also a very worthwhile conference for park owners to attend. The speakers are always excellent. I always learn a ton when I go to George Allen's roundtable. Want to remind people also that all of the newsletters are on the website. The website is Joanne, Joannem, Stevens, Stevens.com. So, and we'll also be glad to mail or email the newsletter to you as well. So just email me, Joanne Stevens at iowarealty.com if you wish to be on the newsletter list. Otherwise, we'll be happy to mail it to you, or you can also get it on the website. If you have a comment, a question, an observation, I welcome that. We want this to be more of a forum, not simply me talking, but we all learn the most. It's always a better discussion if we have people commenting and asking questions. If you have a question, chances are there's somebody else that has the same question. One more thing I wanted to mention, Corey Justice of 21st Mortgage was going to be a guest on the call-in show today, and he had to cancel at the last minute because something came up. But Corey operates at a very high level at 21st Mortgage, both with park owners and retailers. It would be worth your while to give Corey a call. And here's the reason why. 21st Mortgage does have consumer financing for consumers to buy the homes. Also for you as a park owner, for you to buy the homes, they have financing, and you can then either sell the homes, do a rent credit, just, he'll tell you the options that are available. But here's something else that you should know about 21st Mortgage and why it would matter to talk to Corey. They can finance pretty much any buyer that you would have to buy one of your homes. Yes, you heard that right. Pretty much any buyer, and I would say it's probably even closer to any buyer they could finance, even buyers that have had recent bankruptcies. They can find a way to make it work. Now, it won't be a perfect loan by any means. People with credit dings on their score, they're going to have to put more down or have a co-signer. But at least you can tell your buyers that you have an option for them if they want to buy a home. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, and Corey's phone number is 800-955-0021, and it's extension 2163. Again, that's 800-955-0021, extension 2163. That's Corey Justice, or Justice, J-E-S-T-I-C-E, 21st Mortgage, and he'll be able to help you. He's a really good guy that you ought to know. So, the Naked Mobile Home Park. I'm going to tell you a story, or I'll call it kind of an autopsy or an anatomy of a really difficult sale of a mobile home park. And I think when I say those words, it sounds like, oh, these must have been people that were ready to kill each other, because that's kind of what we go to when we hear the word difficult or really tough sale. And it was a partnership. It was a family that owned a very nice park, a beautiful park, large park. And these people were all very well-to-do people in their own right. In other words, they had all either been very successful in a career or had a spouse who was successful in a career, or were just making it in one of the professions and doing very, very well. So they were, while they did get a dividend or a payout from this very nice mobile home park, it's not like they depended on this park for their livelihoods, not by a long shot. They had their parents who had passed away had left them all very well off in addition to their own careers. And so why would this be so difficult, would you think? And again, if you have a question or a comment, please push *6 and you will be unmuted. So this was a very nice family. In fact, I'm still friends with these family members. We talk from time to time. They're lovely people, and they got along very well. They liked each other, but they had decided that they wanted to sell their park, and it's kind of because they did get along so well. As a broker, you sometimes wonder, well, why would they sell? Because this park did not have a lot of the hallmarks of so many parks, most parks that we see today. And what are those hallmarks? Vacant sites, park-owned homes, financing on the park that needs to be, come due or needs to be refinanced, significant maintenance or capital expenditure things that will take money. And so it just didn't have all of the hallmarks that can consume not only a lot of time and a lot of pulling together if you're in a partnership, or if you're have a manager, things that can eat up a lot of resources, time, and eat up a lot of money. You either have to write out a lot of checks if you're in the home sales business or the home rental business, or you have to go to the bank and borrow the money to buy homes. They had none of those issues. There weren't any park-owned homes, and it was, almost full, very little vacancy. There was no debt. So they had the cash flowing pretty well, but they were all at the age that they had decided, for whatever reason, that they were just going to sell their park. They all lived in different parts of the country. That was, one of the things that had precipitated it. One of the family members lived in the town where the park was, so they were the go-to person when there was a question or a problem. So as we got into the sale, they had a very good offer from a very fine company that wanted to buy their park, was willing to just pay a really good price to buy their park, and they liked the offer. But as each day passed, and then pretty soon as each week passed and months passed, there started to be a lot of issues. And what were the issues? The issues were that, number one, they had an attorney that, actually two attorneys from the largest law firm in town, and who went over every sentence of the document, the purchase agreement document, which was a pretty straightforward document that this buyer had used to buy many, many other parks. And so it was a pretty foolproof, pretty straightforward purchase agreement. And so with the legal team, it became a completely different document. And it just made me wonder, if these partners had ever had any real problems as a partnership and being so quick to get the lawyers involved, I think they would have been at an impasse on probably the first day of trying to work out anything that they disagreed on. That can be a sign that this is going to be a tough partnership to work with when everybody immediately goes to their attorney. Not that attorneys don't do a tremendous amount of good to help us to mediate and arbitrate and work out solutions that are good for the partnership. For sure, without a doubt, they absolutely do, and we need the good attorneys. But this sale of this property every day brought a new set of negotiations or more comments, more changes to the document. So, I think the owners were somewhat fortunate that they liked the property, wanted to buy the property. It was important for them to acquire this property, and they hung in there. It was a good 9 months before we actually closed on that sale. But so what happened in the meantime that took so long and made this a difficult partnership? There was some mismanagement going on, even though they had no debt. It was a very large park and produced a lot of cash flow. The parks that are large, over 200 sites, those are definitely in the minority. Most parks, there's a limit to how much vacancy a park can withstand or how much debt you can put on the property. Or people have to have a budget of how many homes they can afford to buy or how much maintenance they can afford to do. You have to think about it and plan it. If you have a really large park, it probably doesn't matter if you decide to overlay all the streets or put in all new water lines or just buy 25 homes at a shot, because you've got the cash in the bank to do that. But if every decision is going to involve just such a long process of indecision, this can be where the partnerships start to derail, especially if the partners aren't nearby, aren't seeing what's happening in the park on a day-to-day basis. And to them, it looks like, wow, we're sure spending a lot of money. What are we getting for our money? I've seen that in other partnerships too, where people will go for literally years without seeing the property. Now, of course, they have a manager, and they probably have a regional manager or somebody in their office who's doing the oversight and visiting the property. So that's probably okay. But sometimes years will pass where nobody really gives any thought to, we've got these vacant sites. We're in a really good market. There isn't enough housing, whether it's type of housing, apartments, condos, mobile homes. Housing is really tight. The job market is good. This describes quite a few markets in the United States today where we just don't have enough housing. And so when you have a market like that and all the other parks are full, and you have 25 to 30%, 40% vacant, there's something not quite right with that picture. I think you would all agree. So remember, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, just push *7 to be unmuted. So getting back to the Naked Mobile Home Park, what happened next was, they had this really good offer. They accepted it. There was a deal, and then the real negotiation started. In other words, it took 3 months to actually get a deal signed. but there were environmental issues, and they were significant. And again, most park owners do not believe that they have any environmental issues. And that, I hope that as a park owner that you don't, but these park environmental issues can come out of nowhere. And let me give you an example of that. I'm involved in a sale right now of a property where there's quite a bit of equipment that is lawnmowers, that type of thing is included in the sale. And the owner has 2 above ground gasoline tanks by the maintenance shop. When the phase 1 consultant went to the property to do their consulting work, they looked at the gas tanks and they said, when the gas tanks are filled, or when gas is, put into one of the lawnmowers, that there can be a drip or 2, which, well, I would submit that when anybody ever goes to fill their car with gas or goes to the marina to put gas in their boat, there's going to be a drip or 2 of gas. So we're still waiting to get the verdict on that, if that's going to require a phase 2, which a phase 2 on an environmental study means that they'll have to do some digging on the property, test the soil, see how much soil is or may have been contaminated. If it is contaminated, how deep the contamination is. And then the phase 3 part of it would be, we'll dig up all the dirt, that's the phase 3, and then we'll put some monitoring systems in to make sure that all of the contaminated soil was removed, so we're not having any more issues with the gasoline. So that seems very far-fetched to have to go to that extent, but those are the kind of things that can come up on a phase 2. Another thing that people don't think about very much is, have you ever had in your park that you know of, or maybe that you don't know of, a tenant who made meth in your park? You had a meth lab in a mobile home in your park. That's something that your county public health department may be aware of. And there's probably many of you on the call who you have a vague notion of, yeah, I did have that, but that was a long time ago. The home is gone, the tenant is gone, but that could be something that that would show up on a phase 1 and maybe even on a phase 2. I think that the environmental agencies that govern these areas are still figuring out just what the requirement is if you have a meth lab on your property. So those are just a couple of examples. In this particular case, they had a significant problem, and that was that a very large Fortune 500 company owned a facility, not a manufacturing facility, but just like a maintenance facility. It was very large next to the property, but they also had, products that they stored there. So the worry was that even though there was no environmental issue now, would the day come when maybe there would be a spill on their property, the Fortune 500 company property, that would seep into this mobile home park. And the worry is that if that would happen, what is a mobile home park owner going to do? File a lawsuit against a multi-billion-dollar company that has unlimited funds to fight such a claim in the courts. So that was a worry. in addition, there was this park had a large maintenance shop with, gasoline tanks. They stored oil, other fluids that potentially could have been, found to be environmentally unsavory. So the owners, were not aware of this or did not pay any attention to were certain best practices in place to make sure that all of these gasoline products, oil products, and so on were being properly monitored so that we could so that there could be a record of any spillages. That's what these state EPA agencies want to see. How much gas was put into the tank and how much did you take out, and is there a gap between that? If there's a gap, that means where did that go? Probably went into the ground and we've got a problem. So continuing on with this, while all of this was going on, the attorneys continued to make demands on the buyer, things like, we won't do this, we won't do that. This wasn't necessarily coming from the sellers, where they were telling their lawyers or, being cheerleaders for their attorneys, saying, well, tell them we won't do this, tell them we insist, we demand, we won't make the sale unless they do that. But what happened was, because the sellers, with the exception of one of the partners, wasn't really ever involved with large sales of assets like this, that when their attorney, they sort of had the mindset that if an attorney said, well, we need to do this, we won't, we'll go back to the buyer and we'll just tell them we won't do these things. The sellers were very meek, and they just went along with, they respected their attorneys, and they assumed that their attorneys were acting in their best interests, which they were, but it just continued to make it a very, very tough deal. At one point, the sellers called to actually cancel the deal. And the buyers, even though they had a lot of time in this, and when a buyer is, has a property under contract, they are going full speed ahead to do their part of making sure they're looking at all the due diligence, getting their financing lined up, doing everything that they can do so that they do not cause any delays or do anything to cause the seller to become unhappy with them. And this buyer was a very fine company, and they knew what they were doing. They were very professional, very very competent, and were doing everything they could to fulfill their end of the contract as quickly as possible. So naturally, they were disappointed when they got the call saying that the deal was canceled. Within a day, within 24 hours, received another call. Well, can we revive this deal? Now we do want to make this deal, but we want these changes. So there was a lot of whipsawing going back and forth, and so that's something to ask yourself. If you are in a partnership, is there a lot of indecision? Is there a lot of demands from a partner? Is there a lot of this whipsawing back and forth that keeps people up in the air about what the decision is? Another thing too was financing. I want to take a moment to talk about financing today. If you're a mobile home park owner, there has never been a better time for you to refinance your property. And I'm encouraging all mobile home park owners to look at, if they did refinance their property, what use would they make of the funds from the refinance? because in today's world, the rates are very low. If you get a new loan, a lot of owners have the idea, well, they don't like debt, and it's many people as they get older, they really, don't want to have much debt on the property, and that's fine. However, if you're an investor and if you have an investment that would make sense, it could very well pay you and be a very good idea to refinance. Maybe not 100% of your park, but maybe some of your park, take some money off the table and then make another investment. Or maybe it's just something that you would really like to do, a second home, or something, helping your kids to buy houses, or just whatever the case may be. Because the other side of taking money out is that you ought to look at the amortization schedule. If you refinance your property and take money out, your new loan on the park is going to amortize much, much, much faster. And if you have a good cash flow, you can always make additional payments on your loan, so you're not going to be necessarily paying off your loan 20 years from now. Again, if someone has a question, just hit *7 and *6 and you'll be unmuted. *6, and we welcome questions on this call. So getting back to this mobile home park.
Joanne, it is your favorite assistant down the hall, Kristen, and I have an email question from Jose Garcia in New Mexico. Things are heating up with me and my partner. He wants to sell, I do not. Any recommendations? I do know we're getting down to the last 5 minutes of the show, but if you have any quick recommendations for him, I think he'd appreciate it.
Okay. I'll just say this very quickly. I didn't know of a real estate partnership, and it was an excellent real estate company. They're still in business, but many years ago, one of the partners got a divorce. Two of the partners got a divorce, and one of the partners had more than one divorce, and a lot of kids and stepkids involved, and their parks were doing very well. They're still doing very well, but the founder of the company decided that they needed to get a professional involved, and they hired a consultant that dealt with business. It was not an accountant, was not an attorney, and they hired this consultant to help them sort through their family issues, because what the partners were worried about was not the park so much, but what happens when one of the kids, stepkids, ex-wives, current wife, that wasn't known to the partners. They didn't know how they were going to be to deal with in the business, even though they weren't involved in the business, but how they would influence the husband. Or there was a wife that was a partner, and how her new husband would influence her with the business. So they wanted to try their hardest to eliminate the influence of these new spouses or future spouses, and come up with agreements and practices and strategies of how they keep on talking to each other, even when they're getting advice and influence from people who didn't really know anything about the mobile home park business. And so I would my advice would be to ask probably professionals in your area or through your association, or other business owners, if they have a recommendation of who are these, it would be like maybe a business relationship coach, or just somebody who can arbitrate, mediate, and help business owners work through their differences and come to reasonable agreements that people can live with. And sometimes that is going to mean, if you don't have a buy-sell agreement, and many mobile home park owners do not. A lot of partnerships, when they went into business, it never dawned on them. Probably their attorney or their accountant or somebody should have said, and you need a buy-sell agreement, which a buy-sell agreement basically is what do you do when you don't agree? Are you going to buy out your partner? Is your partner going to buy out you? If that is what's going to happen, what is the method? How do you formulate what the price is? And a good attorney or an accountant will be very skilled at helping you craft a buy-sell agreement that you can both live with, that will be fair to both the person being bought out and the person who is doing the buying. And so that is something that I highly recommend, that you have a buy-sell agreement. So I hope that helps you and your partner. So we just have a couple of minutes left. If there aren't any questions, I'm just going to get to the end of the story here. Ultimately, after a lot of more negotiations, the sale finally did close. The new owners of the park, they kept in touch with the sellers. They've, meet up with the sellers from time to time. And so they have a good relationship with those sellers. But I think if the buyers had not been as accommodating and as determined to buy the property no matter what, that seller probably wouldn't have had a sale. And not that they could not have sold it to anybody else. Of course they could have, but they probably wouldn't have had somebody who would have been as good to work with and as understanding, and who had the experience to work through these issues. And I think if they hadn't sold the property, it probably would have been a matter of time before they would have had more management problems. And I'll tell you just one final thing, and then our time will be up. One thing that happened in this that we all need to pay attention to is, as a broker, as I was helping them get their numbers together, get ready to sell, they called me one day to say that they had fired their manager. The reason they had fired their manager was because